Fine. So as a part of payables, we have payment formats under security profile. So just we'll go through payment formats. So what points we have to understand here? We'll see. So when we talk about this payment formats, already we discussed at the time of bank account creation, Oracle is providing few seeded payment formats. So just you can use to run the process, but reality as per the check format. Say your client is using Citibank check, and the technical people has to set the same alignments by using the payment format what Oracle is providing. And if your client is using one more bank account from Standard Chartered Bank, there could be at least the slight difference between Standard Chartered and Citibank check formats. Now, if they are using the banks from the two different banks, bank accounts from two different banks, for each bank account, that means each bank account in the sense here, for each bank, we have to create the separate check formats. That is a pure technical task, but what we should aware we will discuss here. So we should know where we have these formats in the system. So find payment formats. Then the formats need to be aligned, that we call as the templates. So say modify payment templates should be done by technical consultant. Once technical consultants will modify based on the check format or alignments, we have to create the format. Create payment formats. Okay, against the modified payment templates as per the check formats. Then finally these we have to assign to bank account and payment process profile. At the time of bank account creation and payment process profile creation, we have to use the same formats. Okay. First we'll see how to find the payment formats. Go to application, tools, reports and analytics. Go to reports. Go to catalog. This you can cancel this. Okay, just select catalog. Here, just the last session also we have seen the same. We have a two folders here, my folders and shared folders. Go to shared folders and go to financials, expand it. Just drag little right, scroll little down. select payments. Here you can find all the formats. Okay, here are all the formats you can find. So the file what we need is disbursement payment file format. Here you can find all the formats which Oracle is providing as a seeded. We can download and we can modify. One second. So this is a file we have, disbursement payment file format, and here you have a more options. Click on more, and here you can see different actions you can take against this. But now our requirement is we want to customize this. Okay, we in the sense technical people. So here we have those formats. These need to be customized. For that, what technical people will do it, instead of going with this navigation, okay, they use the navigation called as XMLP server. Okay, XMLP server, XML publisher server. Okay, instance URL slash XMLP server. This is the navigation they use, server URL they use. Then they'll be landing in this page, they'll have a full privileges. Now go click on catalog. The same folder, okay, shared folders. In financials, just expand financials. In financials, select payments. Now here, disbursement payment file formats. Now click on more. You have different options. Now you can see customize, you can see download. Earlier we don't have this. Only the difference is what server URL you are following, accordingly you will get a privileges. Okay. So this is how the technical people will use the URL, and they'll click on customize and they'll modify. After modifying, they'll upload. After uploading, we'll create the formats against the template. Let's see what they will do. Okay, they'll just click on customize. Click on customize. Just wait for a second. It takes some time. Wait. Now in the disbursement payment file format, it's opening all the formats what Oracle is providing and what already created by technical people. These are the different formats. And here scroll little down. We used one format called as standard check format at the time of bank account creation. This is the format we used. Standard check. Now this is just seeded one Oracle is providing. But as per the real check format, technical people has to customize it. They have to modify this. What they have to do is they click on edit against the standard check format and save this file. Open this. This is the XML file format. XML file. Here you can notice certain fields like this is the actual format they are providing. The check number, payment date, okay, and payment amount. So what are the details? This is a standard check format Oracle is providing. So this need to be aligned by technical people. Okay, with XML. Okay, with XML tool they can do the modifications. Which information exactly need to be printed on the check? This format only will carry the data from the system to printer. Okay, so they'll just modify what fields like pay to, amount, invoice, date, what other information need to be printed on the check, along with the check like on instruction also what information need to be printed. This should be modified by technical people. Say they modified, and once they modify, so they are just saving here X. Okay, they just modify and they'll maintain this in the RTF format. Say they, you just think they modify. We cannot do that. So they do the alignments and all by using the XML tool. They'll change how that height, width, and how much space they have to leave when they are just printing the supplier name and amounts. Exactly, the amount need to be printed in the allocated space in the check. They'll take the measurements of check. First of all, we get some cancel check from the client, and we get as a consultant and will share to the technical team, and they will take the measurements, the check measurements, height, width, etc. By following those measurements, these alignments they do. Okay, so that's how this need to be modified. Once they modify, what we have to do is we have to create our own format by using that for template. Now whatever we downloaded, that you can call as a template. Okay, standard check format template. Now what we can do is here, once technical people will modify it, you can go to view a list and click on create and say upload. Your layout name is Amex check template, or just Amex check format template. We are creating this is actual template only. Against this will create the format. Just you can say check template. Browse that template. Click on browse. Go to desktop. This is what we saved, RTF file format. Now we didn't do any modifications. That is not our job. That should be done by technical people. What we have to do, we are just discussing. So where we can find the files, we have seen the formats where we can find. The technical people has to download and they have to modify. Now we are treating as they download and modify. Once they modify, we have to create the here just the layout template we have to create here. That's what we are doing. The type is RTF template. Language you can select. Okay. Select language and say upload. Now what are the template is modified by technical team. The template we are uploading. Okay, just we uploaded. You can click on again view a list. You can see the same in the bottom of this list. So this is the one which we uploaded just now, Amex check template. Okay, so what should be the default format? You can select PDF should be the default. Then you can save it. So ideally this activity should be done by technical team. They download, they modify, then they'll create the template and they'll upload the same. As a functional consultant, what we have to do is Against this, we have to create the format, or else even they can create the format when they complete this activity. But we should aware how to create the formats. So go to search page or our implementation project. From there, we can create the format against this template. So go to search for formats, payment formats, manage formats. Okay. Here we are going to create check format. So you have to select the type. Select type. Type you can select as a disbursement payment file formats. Select disbursement payment file formats. Then click on create. Okay, done. The name Amex check. Okay, you can give the name as Amex check format code. Amex check format. Select template. So we created format. We can search. Template we created, template format we created, right? We give a name as Amex only. What happened? This is the name we given. Amex. Save it. It already saved. Now just try. Search. Let's refresh this. It is saved here. Let's check template. Go to manage formats. Select disbursement payment file formats. Say create. Amex check and code. Select template. Search and select. should come like no need to refresh that page and all. We just will log out and log in and we'll check, but not required. Ideally, it should reflect. Once we save, it should come here. Okay, this is a technical team like create payment formats. Just 1 second. You can search for formats, manage formats. So disbursement payment file formats. So create. Now the template we have to select. Here it is coming. Okay, Amex check template. Select the same template. Say save and close. It was not reflecting. We created, it was not reflecting. Done. This is how we can create the template. This template we have to assign to bank account level to the documents as well as payment process profile level we can assign. So go to bank accounts. Okay, go to task called as manage bank accounts. Our bank account name is Amex corporate account. Go to the same account. Click on edit. Here we have a payment documents. Amex check that you can select. Here you can see format we selected standard check format. At the time of bank account creation, we didn't create any our own formats. So we selected this which Oracle is providing. Once technical people modify that standard check format to required format, we have to update here. Select, click on edit. Here you can select whatever technical team created. MX check format. So okay. Now say simple like this. This account is Amex corporate account. That means for Amex Bank, Amex format we have to assign. If it is a different bank, you have to assign the relevant check. For each bank, what are the accounts we have will have a separate format. Now the same we have to update at payment process profile level also. Go to payment process profile. Manage payment process profiles. We create it as a Amex. Here also you can see standard check format we selected. The reality we select whatever format is created for the specific bank. Here also you can select Amex payment file format, nothing but check format. You can update. So this is what we have to understand. Where we can find the format directly, you can go with the navigation, but you don't find option called as customize. So that is the reason you have to type server URL slash okay slash XMLP server. This is what you have to type. It means XML publisher server. Connecting to XML publisher server. With this path, you will get full privileges. You can select option called as customized. That's how you'll be able to navigate to that page to modify. That modification and all should be done by technical team. So we should aware where we have formats. Once the template is ready, how to create the format, where we have to assign this, we should know. This can be taken care by technical team. So this is all about formats. And we have a concept called as security profile. That reality in Fusion that is not required directly will be able to manage with the direct functionality. We'll discuss it. Okay. So, so what is the use of the security profile or MOAC, multi-org access control in EBS? Anyone, please.
To limit the user's access to the data or applications.
The simple line. What is the use of MOAC? If no MOAC, what is the like how you what you cannot manage, what you cannot simplify?
You will be confined to only one operating unit, business unit, if MOAC is not there.
No, forget about this. I'm talking about EBS only. EBS. Let's talk about it.
In EBS, that's what. In case you are not assigned with multi-organization access control, you will be using only one operating unit at one point of time.
Okay. Yeah. Fine, correct. In the simple words, with the help of MOAC, you can access to multiple operating units from single responsibility, or how many operating units you need access that you can set through this, right? Otherwise, say you have 10 operating units. In EBS, in Fusion, what we are calling as business units, in EBS we call as operating units. Say you have 10 operating units. If you want to have access to 10 operating units in EBS, for each operating unit, you have to maintain the separate responsibility. Okay. responsibility. For example, AP responsibility. With this, you can access to operating unit. With the help of responsibility only, you can access to operating unit. In Fusion, with the role, you can access to business unit. With the role, you can have access to business unit. We are assigning the business unit to specific roles like payable supervisor, manager, specialist. We assign. The same way in EBS, we have to assign operating unit to responsibility. So here we have to create multiple response. Say for example in EBS, here I take the case as responsibility 1, operating into 1, responsibility 2, operating into 2, responsibility 3, operating into 3. So in EBS, so you have 3 responsibilities. For 3 responsibilities, you are assigning 3 operating units. So from AP responsibility 1, user can have access to OU1. From AP responsibility 2, user can have access to OU2 only. From AP responsibility 3, user can have access to OU3 only. Now there is one responsibility called as there is one person like who is working for AP responsibility, say 4. For one person, we given this responsibility to work on payables, but that person required access to these 3 operating units. 3 operating units. In EBS, what we can do is we can group these 3 operating units with a concept called as security profile. That security profile we can assign to this responsibility. Now this responsibility can have access to security profile. In this security profile, we have 3 operating units. This user will be able to have access to 3 operating units. Or else for this user 1, okay, user 1 required access to 3 operating units. For that reason, we are creating one responsibility. We are grouping these 3 and that we are assigning to this responsibility. This user through this responsibility you can access to 3 operating units. Otherwise, what we have to do, we have to assign these 3 responsibilities to this user. When the user is working for operating unit 1, user should get connected to responsibility 1. If user wants to work for operating unit 1, the user should get connected to responsibility 1. Then only the responsibility get connected to OU1. User can work for OU1 related business transactions. If user wants to work for OU2, user should be in this responsibility, then only the user can work for OU3. If user wants to work for OU3, user should be in this AP responsibility, then only this user can work. When this user is working for OU1, if this user wants to work for OU2, the user should switch from responsibility 1 to responsibility 2. So if you group these operating units through security profile and if you assign to this responsibility, without switching from one to other, all will be available from the single responsibility. This is how we have a security profile concept in EBS. When it comes to Fusion, what you can do is, say for example, you can take the role called as accounts payable manager. Now say this accounts payable manager required access to 3 business units. Okay, 3 BUs. 3 BUs access this accounts payable manager required. Say BU1. Okay, we assign BU1 to this accounts payable manager. The same role you can assign BU2 and BU3 also. So assign BU2, assign BU3. Okay, we have a user called as XYZ. To that user, for accounts payable manager role, 3 BUs access required. Just you can assign role called as accounts payable manager to this user. Then you can go to data access for users. To the same role, you can assign BU1, BU2, BU3 as a 3 separate records. Okay, selecting user, selecting the accounts payable manager role, selecting BU1. Again, selecting the same user, same role, BU2. Same user, same role, BU3. This is how you can select. After completing this, when you go to invoice creation page, this user can have access to these 3 BUs. Any BU the user can select in the invoice creation time or payment creation time, they'll be able to process the transactions. But in EBS, since we have a responsibilities concept, if you don't create security profile, you can see only one operating unit. But in the Fusion, no responsibility concept, roles concept. When you talk about roles, switching is not there. Okay, switching is not there. That is the reason ideally you don't need to create the security profile in Fusion applications. So this is the point we have to understand. Okay. The same role you can assign the 3 different business units so that this user can have access to these 3 BUs in any page. Just 3 times you have to assign, no switching is required in case of Fusion application. Still, if you want to understand how to create the security profile, we can see, but that will become additional task of doing that activity. There is no great usage of security profile in the Fusion applications. Okay.
Sir, one doubt, sir. One doubt, sir.
Please.
Because every time you are creating an invoice, you are selecting the role as well as the business unit.
No.
In Fusion.
One second. Have you selected any role when you are creating transactions? No. Within the role or say across the roles, what are the privileges you got, those get displayed in the navigator window once you select the task in the task list. That's all. Nowhere you are selecting the role.
Okay.
Yes, right?
Sorry, I'm not practicing much because of my other activity.
See, it's not like practicing. Practice is not required to answer this. See, I'll go to the navigator. Do I need to select payables manager or payables supervisor or payables specialist to create invoices? I'll go to payables. If I want to create invoices, I'll click on invoice. Am I selecting any role here?
But yes, you are selecting only invoices. That invoices is coming because of the role you are assigned.
You tell me which role?
That is payables manager or payables clerk or whatever that.
Can be manager, specialist or supervisor or something else. I am not selecting the role. You can see clearly.
Okay. So that means if we have the role of accessing one invoice page, you can do the invoicing for any of the operating units.
Business unit.
Sorry, business units.
Yeah, that's what we are discussing.
Okay.
So
okay. In case you want to control, sir, what to do? One user has to have only one business unit. In that case, what to do?
You tell me.
Data access comes into picture.
Not required. Not at all required. To that user, assign accounts payable manager, assign BU1 only, remaining two don't assign. How many required with those assign? Over.
So for the role you are assigning the business unit.
That's all. The same we are doing, right?
Okay. For one role, you can use as many business units as you want him to work on.
Exactly. How many BUs
Okay.
you want to give to the user, those many BUs you can assign to same role.
Okay. Okay.
You want to allow one user to have access to one business unit for payables. Payables, which role you are
Hmm.
assigning? Say manager role you are assigning. To manager role, assign only one BU so that that user will get access to one BU only. Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
I understand now.
required access to two BUs. Okay. Assign two BUs. Okay. Go to data access, select user XYZ, select role called as accounts payable manager, select BU1. Again, the same user need access to BU2 also. Select same user, same role and BU2 also. When the user will
Yeah.
invoice creation page, the user will be able to access two business units in the list of values. That's all.
But whereas in release 12, yeah, EBS, you have only one business unit to give one responsibility through the profile option.
Operating unit.
MO operating unit.
Operating unit, not business unit, operating unit. EBS operating.
Yes.
Why we
In
are
EBS
creating
operating
security
unit.
profile here? Why we are creating security profile? If you don't create the security profile from this responsibility, see for OU1, user should be in OU1 related responsibility. To work on OU2, user should switch from here to here. To avoid the switching, we are grouping and we are assigning to single. From the single responsibility, user can have access to all the operating net. However, here it is possible directly. In Fusion, you can assign
Yes, sir. Thank you.
multiple business units to the same user for same or different roles. You don't need to switch. There is no switching concept, role switching concept in the EBS Fusion. But in EBS, responsibility switching concept we have to work for different operating units. That is the reason we are creating the security profile. Ideally, here that is not required. Okay. We can see now how to create the security profile, the option they given. But nothing we can go through that and we can complete how to create the security profile. Ultimately, you don't get any benefit. That's how they given. Since there is a direct solution, you don't need to go for security profile. That's all. Simply you can go and assign. Yeah. Say you want to give access to 3 business units for one user. You just directly you can go and do assign. For example, we'll create one user, go to security console. So accounts payable supervisor. Okay. Accounts payable supervisor. We create the AP user. Now this user need access to 3 business units. Then you can go and assign to the same role. That's all. business unit. You can give access to different business units. Click on add. The same user required access to multiple business units and he is going to work as a accounts payable supervisor. Same accounts payable supervisor, business unit. Now run LDAP and go to invoice creation page. You are able to see, you'll be able to see those three business units. This is how you can provision the access to one user for multiple business units with just this role assignment process. Okay, to the same role we are assigning, same role, or it could be different roles. Maybe you want to assign the three roles to this user related to payables. So those three roles you can assign each business unit. That's how the user will be able to have access to only those specific business units. Okay, you can just submit LDAP. Okay, once this is synchronized, you can just log in with that user and you'll be able to see. But security profile concept we have in the Fusion also. Even if you do all those, still you have to do these assignments. Okay, with just security profile, this concept doesn't work. You can group the business units and you can assign to specific user, but still these assignments you have to do. When you have to do these assignments, what is the use of doing the security profile creation in Fusion applications? Okay, if you want to create security profile, yes, you can create. You can group the multiple business units. Even if you group, it doesn't work directly, same as EBS. You have to do these additional assignments. When you are doing these assignments, there is no use of the security profile. Just I'll take you to the page, but no use at all. Or else you can search with organization security profiles. Manage organization security profile. So click on create. MX3B used access. Here you can select secure by organization classification. You can select as a business unit. Same as EBS, but not required. Even if you do this, you have to do that additional task. Or select just secure by organization list. Here you can list out which business units. This BU. This BU. This BU. This is how you can create the security profile. This we have to assign to the role with the data role setup. Here search for data role. Okay, this is the task. Manage data role under security profile. This is not required, just for your information I'm taking through. Just say create mix data role. Here select, you want to assign that security profile to which role. Say you want to assign to account payment supervisor. Okay, to this role you want to assign. Click on next. Just now we created security profile that we have to assign to this job role. Here we have to provide some text here. Okay, you can select any one of the value or just provide any data. Just you can type in it. Here personal security profile also. Just type in it. They're not populating. So I'm selecting manager role. Ideally here that the option should come. Okay, secure organizations by business unit. That you have to enable, then it will allow you to assign. Okay. So that's how ideally the functionality it will display. But here, even that also they are not showing in the data role definition. But ideally not required. You don't need to create. Basically, this is a page just to understand. But you don't need to create. This is a process you have to follow. Assign how many views want to give the access to the same user, so that you don't need to switch. Go to the same page. The page, whatever the BU required, you can select. Now, if you go to payables invoice creation, so how many BUs are assigning to this user for this role or a different payable related role, all you will be able to access. Okay. So this is the point you have to understand. In EBS, whatever we have a security profile concept that you don't need to implement here directly by assigning the roles, you'll be able to have access. In EBS, we switch from one to other responsibility, but in the Fusion, you don't need to switch. Okay, you don't need to switch. If you assign, you can get access, which is equal to security profile directly. But if you want to create the security profile, create security profile that you have to assign to that role. That's how, again, after assigning, after completing all those, how many PUs access this user required for this role, these all assignments we have to do once again. That means the setups what we are doing as a security profile, those doesn't have any value addition. That's the reason. This is how this process, this approach only we have to follow. Which user for which role, how many BUs access required, directly assign, run LDAP, then that will work. Okay. So this is the point we have to notice in case of Fusion. In EBS, responsibilities we have to switch from one to other. That is the reason we are creating security profile. Here you don't need to switch from one role to another role. You may assign 10 roles to user, but switching is not required. As per the role, it will create display the task. You can click on the task how many BUs access that user got, all the BUs you can see in the selected page. That's how it works. Okay. So this is a point you can notice. Ideally, the security profile is not required here since we have a direct access through roles. Okay, this is a point you have to understand.
Lakshman sir, one more point. I was unable to create a employee and supervisor relationship. That sheet was getting error for me.
Yeah, we'll discuss in that.
Okay, sir.
Yes, yeah, thanks. So then that's all about payables application. Now, when we're done with this P2P, I will start with the receivables application. So these are the basic setups we have to complete for receivables. Once we're done with this setup, there are multiple concepts related to receivables. We'll work on one by one. So same as the payables, few concepts require additional setups, few concepts you can test directly based on the basic setups. So first we'll see what are the basic setups we have to complete to implement receivables application. So in payables, when we are doing the setups, we have seen the common options, right? As a part of payables, we have seen the common options for payables and procurement. So as a part of that common options, we provided some mandatory accounts and all. The same way, receivables also similar to the common options, we have system options. Okay, within this system options only, we can set up few accounts and we can set few controls for receivables application. In payables, we have a common options, invoice options, and payment options. But in the receivables, altogether we have system options only. Okay, with the system options only, you can set what controls we want to set for entire receivables application. Those we can set in the system options only. Now we'll just go through the system options and we can just have a look how those looks like. So just we'll go through that. Initially, you don't need to set anything. When we are working on the relevant features, you can go and set which functionality you want to implement, how it should work, etc. You can set. But now to understand as a part of setups, we'll go through those options. Go to our project, search for system options. Okay. Here we have a task called as manage receivable system options. Click on this. Okay, manage receivable system options. Click on go to task icon. So ideally, if you want to create the system options, you have to click on create here. Okay, you have to click on create to set up the system options for every business unit. It's a BU specific. But here in the list, we should be able to find out our business unit. Okay, let's try. You just go with advanced. Let's start with a PU name starts with Apex. Try. So it is not coming. Why it is not coming? Already system created system options for our BU. How? When you submit that rapid implementation sheet, system can do that. That is the reason we are not able to find our BU again to set the system options. Okay. So that is the point we have to notice. Again, we navigate. System options. You can search for receivable system options. Okay, manage receivable system options. So when we load that setups through wrapped implementation sheet, you don't need to set up system options. Already we have seen we didn't set the common options in payables also, right? The common options system created, system configured by providing the required accounts. The same way in receivables, because of the wrapped implementation sheets, you no need to set up the system options. That system will take care. So how system completed the system option setup for our BU, you can find it. Here you can select our BU to find out how the system options are already configured. Here what are the BUs you are able to see. For all these BUs, system options are already completed. Select our BU, MX US Business Unit. Click on search. We are not creating, we are finding, because system created already. That happens through rapid implementation. Now select it. Select this record. Click on edit. Okay, select this record and click on edit. Yeah. Here you can see what are the accounts or required system is already selected. Okay, any values required, any information required, system selected. And when we are working on the specific functionality, we have to provide the relevant data. Okay, that we will see when we are working on the different concepts in the receivables. For now, you don't need to touch anything here. Okay, system is just defaulting the basic information which is required to complete this system options. Okay, you don't need to do anything. Say cancel. We are closing this page. So system options are configured by system with the basic information because of rapid implementation sheet. Yeah. Always in every implementation we use the rapid implementation sheet only. We never do the setup through manual process when it comes to chart of accounts creation, primary ledger creation, legal entity, business units. Now, in payables, we have seen how to create the invoice. If you go to invoice creation page, we have one field called as invoice type. We are selecting invoice as a standard invoice, debit memo, credit memo, okay, prepayment. This is how we are selecting invoice type and we are creating invoices. But in the receivables, if you want to create the transactions, you cannot create the transactions directly. You have to set up transaction type. What are the different type of transactions you want to create in the receivables? Those are all the transaction types we have to define. Okay. So in payables, you don't need to create invoice types. Okay, all Oracle is providing and you can create. But in the receivables, transactions classes Oracle is providing. But by using which transaction class you want to create the transaction that we have to define. It's very simple. In receivables, if you want to create any transaction, transaction type is mandatory. The transaction types we have to create. There we can set up how the invoices can be created, how debit memos, credit memos, or various different transactions can be created, and what should be the process. Everything we can set. Okay, we'll go and see so that we can understand. You can take simple point. In receivables, if you want to create any transaction, transaction type is mandatory. Without transaction type, we cannot create the transactions. This is what we have to understand. Let's see how we can create the transaction types in the receivables. Go to project, search for transaction types. The task name is transaction types. This is the task we have to use. Manage transaction types. Okay. Manage transaction types. Click on go to task icon. Say create. In receivables, at the time of transaction creation time, we have to use the transaction type set. Already we discussed. Wherever you see the term called as set, it is nothing but reference data set. Okay. Wherever you see the term called as set, that is nothing but reference data set. What sets Oracle is providing? Common and enterprise. Okay. So whenever you do this any setup, if any set is required, you can proceed with the common. Okay. You can use the common. Or your client wants to maintain the sets BU specific, you can use those. But when you are practicing, you can proceed with the common. Select reference data set as a common set. That means we are assigning this payment transaction type to common, because common is assigned to our entire BU level. The BU level, what are the reference data objects we have, for all those common is assigned. Only for payment terms we changed. Here you can select common. For any setups, if reference data set is required, you can select common. Reason BU level common only associated. So common set. And legal entity is not mandatory. You can provide the name. I'll say Amex invoice. We are creating this transaction type to create the invoice. Okay, whatever you want to create, you have to create the transaction type. It can be invoice or debit or credit memo. Description is optional. And you want to create what by using this transaction type? What we want to create, that we have to select here. We want to create invoice. To create invoice in the receivables, we are creating the transaction type called as Amex invoice. And set transaction status. If you set this transaction status as open, then only you can use this transaction to create the transaction. And creation sign. In payables, we have seen standard invoice means you can enter the amounts with a positive sign. Debit or credit memos means negative sign. But in the receivables, we have a flexibility to set. You want to create this transaction with which sign? Ideally, if it is invoice, it should be positive sign. Okay, select positive only. No need to change. So with this transaction type, you can create invoice. When you create invoice, we have to print and we have to send to our customers. For that, printing is required. Generate bill, select as a yes. So that you can print bills and you can submit to the customers. Now this transaction type, the transaction type what we are creating, that is required for which business unit. To that business unit, we have to assign this transaction type. Here click on create. We are going to assign this transaction type to our business unit. Since we completed chart of accounts primary ledger setup, automatically system will default all these accounts since we use the rapid implementation sheets. You select our BU here. See how this criteria we have. So start with Amex. Select and save. Okay. See, automatically is defaulting all the accounts because of the rapid implementation sheet. In that sheet, all the specifications are there. For revenue account, additional specification as revenue, receivables account. So when you load that through that sheet, these all accounts will get defaulted. So you can say, but again, these accounts are not mandatory. When these are required, we will discuss. There is a separate setup called as auto accounting. There will understand. But these accounts are not mandatory here. Based on business scenario only, these are required. What is the case and all we'll discuss. Okay. Here few checkboxes system is enabling, those we have to understand since those are very much important, system is enabling. So open receivables. Open receivables means with this transaction type, if you create the transaction against any customer, then only you can use this transaction type. Here click on create. We are going to assign this transaction type to our business unit. this transaction balances will get updated against the customer. If I disable, say customer has to pay 2 lakhs. With this transaction type, I am going to create the transaction with 1 lakh. If the checkbox is not enabled, system will display those 2 lakhs only. This 1 lakh system won't add to the customer. If you enable open receivables, then only the balances will get updated against the customer. If this checkbox is enabled, post to ledger, once I create the transaction with this transaction type, I can create accounting entries, I can transfer to general ledger application. If I disable the checkbox, I can create the transaction with this transaction type, but we cannot create the accounting entries and we cannot transfer to general ledger. Ideally, that is required. So you don't need to change it. Okay. And one more checkbox we have here, which is enabled natural application only. That means you are creating the transaction with $100. Max you can apply receipt with $100 only. That we call as natural application. Say you have invoice with $100, but customer paid $200. If you want to apply $200, that we call as over applications. That scenario we can go with the over applications. Ideally, if customer has to pay $100, customer will pay 100 or less than 100, not more than 100. If it is more than 100, that will adjust. We may refund to the customer, or else we may keep in the customer account, but we don't take it. Okay. So that is the reason it should be always natural application. What system is defaulting, that you can accept. So this is how we have to create the transaction type for invoice. For invoice, we create a transaction type. How we created? We select a transaction type as a common set. Why we are selecting common set? Our BU level we have a common set only, and we are giving the name. Transaction class is invoice. Status should be open, then only we can use it. And creation sign is positive sign, since that is invoice. And generate bill set to yes, so that you will be able to print the bill against this invoice. And rest what system is defaulting, you can accept. Assign this transaction type to our business unit. The rest of information system will default, since we loaded the data through rapid implementation sheet. Now here you can say save and create another. And we'll create few transaction types like debit memo and credit memo. So here select transaction type set as a common, and name is say Amex debit memo, and select class as a debit memo. Status should be open if you want to use. In receivables, debit memo purpose is positive side. Debit memo we use in receivables as a invoice transaction only. In payables, debit and credit memos we are using to reduce the balance of invoice with the different reasons. But in the receivables, debit memo ideally we use for the purpose of standard invoice only. So for a debit memo, creation sign take as a positive sign. Only credit memo got negative sign. We'll discuss when you are creating those, we'll discuss the scenarios. Okay. So when you in receivables, debit memo is positive sign. Okay. By default positive sign as per business functionality. So here you can say generate bill as a yes, and assign this transaction type to our business unit. Select BU, account system will default automatically. Say okay, and say save and create another. Now we'll create the credit memo. First select reference data set as a common. Ramex credit memo. Say credit memo. Credit memo sign should be here. Select status as open. The credit memo sign should be negative. Receivables credit memo means negative sign. You want to print the bill when you create the transaction against this. Yes. And assign this transaction type to our BU, so that in our BU will be able to create the credit memos by using this transaction type. Select it. say save and create another. Select transaction type set. Now create chargeback. What is a chargeback and all we discuss when you create in the system. So now just you can select as a type. Select as a chargeback. The transaction class is chargeback. Select status as open. Chargeback is similar to invoice transaction only in the receivables. How exactly what is the business case we will discuss when we are working on the chargeback. Okay, we will work on chargeback. At the time we will discuss. For now, just remember all these points. Chargeback also similar to invoice only. That is the reason sign should be positive only. This printing is required. Assign this to our business unit. So, okay. Now, if somebody is going to ask you, what do you mean by transaction type? What you can answer? It's very simple. Without transaction type, you cannot create the transaction, the receivables. With the transaction type, we can define the transaction process. We are defining, we are setting up the process. If it is invoice, okay, if it is invoice transaction type, whether invoice can be created with the positive sign or negative sign, or bill need to be generated or not, or to open receivables or not. That means the balances need to be updated against the customer or not, and accounting, creating accounting entries, transferring to general ledger is required or not. And again, the transaction type should be available for which business unit. This is all we are setting up. Okay, we are setting up. That means simply you can say with the help of transaction type, we can define the transaction process. Okay, with which sign or which as a like generation and posting to GL, all these we are setting. So that simply you can say we are defining the transaction process with the transaction type. You can say save and close. We create a transaction type for invoice, debit memo, credit memo, chargeback. Done. So we'll be able to create all those transactions since we create a transaction type. In payables, when you create invoice, we are entering the invoice number. Okay. Reason we are getting the invoice number from the supplier. But when we are in the receivables, we will act as a suppliers. We have to generate the number and we have to give to the customers. Customers will enter in their books whatever the number we are giving. So when you create the transactions in the receivables, we have to generate the number. For number generation purpose, we use the transaction source. By using the transaction source, you can generate the numbers for the transaction types. Say you are going to create an invoice transaction. System has to generate the number. We require transaction source for that. You are creating the debit memo. Number need to be generated. We have to create transaction source for a debit memo. Okay. So for each transaction type, we have to create the transaction source. If you have 4 transaction types, 4 transaction sources. If you have 2 transaction types, 2 transaction sources. Why? With the transaction type, you can define the transaction process and you will be able to create the transactions. Why transaction source is required? When you create the transactions by using the transaction types, number need to be generated. For number generation purpose, we can use the transaction sources. We'll go and see how to create the transaction sources for our each transaction type. Here you have a task called as manage transaction sources. Click on go to task icon. Say create. So here also reference data set is required. Select the common one. Select common, say OK. The legal entry and all not required. Here you can provide the name. We want to create the transaction source for invoice creation. Say Amex invoice. Take the same as the description. Here description field is mandatory. And we want to create the transactions. When you create the transaction, system has to generate the numbering. How do you create the transaction? Through manual process only. We have other option to create through import process. Yes, we will see that also. For now, whatever we create, those are manual. And select from date. You can select today's date. Okay. Now, system has to generate the number. Number system has to, when you create the invoice transaction, system has to generate the number from 1. They given field name as the last transaction number. Reality, this should be next transaction number. Okay. Please understand this label name as the next transaction number. If I give 1, it will start generating the number from 1. Okay. So when you create a mix invoice, system has to generate the number from 1. Here we given the name. System cannot read it. How system will understand? Here we have to provide the transaction type. With which transaction type, when you create the transaction, system has to generate this number that we have to select. Okay. So when system will create, when we create the transaction with transaction type called as Amex invoice, then this number system has to generate. That's all. Okay. When you create the transactions by using this transaction type, Amex invoice transaction type, by using Amex invoice transaction type, when you create the transaction, system has to generate the number from 1. That's all. Here you can say save and create next. Select reference data set as a common. And say you want to, when you create the debit memo also, system has to generate the number. Say Amex debit memo. So here you can select from date. Scroll and you can find. Okay, Amex debit memo. So when you create the debit memo transaction, and what should be the number? What should be the starting number? You can give any number. For invoice be given, it should start from 1. For debit memo also you can give from 1, or it could be maybe 101 or 1001. Any numbering you can give. So for a debit memo also it should start from 1 only. Or you can give some different number. Say save and create another. Select reference data set as a common. Here you can say Amex credit memo transaction source. When you create the credit memo also, system has to generate the number. Credit memo. For credit memo, say system has to start numbering from 101. Should be the first number. Okay. Here we have one more transaction type which we created, that is Amex chargeback. For chargeback, we no need to set transaction source. Automatically system will create the transaction source for chargeback. By using that, system will create the number for chargeback transaction. We no need to set. We have to set only this. Say save and close. Done. Okay. We create a transaction type to create the transaction with certain rules and conditions, which we are calling as, we define the process for transactions, and we create a transaction sources to generate the numbering for the transactions. By using the transaction type, when you create the transaction, system has to generate the numbering for those transactions, for which transaction type system has to generate what number that we specified in the transaction source setup. Now we have to configure auto accounting. What does it mean by auto accounting? In payables, when you create invoice, automatically it is taking debit and credit. Debit it is taking from the distribution if it is a manual invoice. If it is a PO match, it is taking the distribution from the PO. From PO it is creating the distribution. And liability account it is taking from invoice level. How it is coming to invoice? It is coming from common options to invoice header. From header it is taking the liability account to create accounting entries. So this is how it is happening. But in receivables, it doesn't work in that way. You have to set a rule. If it is a debit account, in debit account from company it has to take from where, department it should take from where, account it should take from where. For each and every segment value, we have to set a rule in receivables to take accounts automatically when you create the transaction. That you can set up by using the auto accounting rules. Okay, when you create the transaction receivables, so you create a transaction, invoice transaction. When you create invoice transaction, system has to create accounting entry. The basic accounting entry in receivables when you create transaction is accounts receivable account is debit, revenue account is credit. Okay, accounts receivable account is debit, revenue account is credit. Now, when you create the transaction, this is the basic accounting system we look for. For account receivable, what is the account code combination? Say company department account. From where it has to take company, from where it has to take department, from where it has to take account, all we have to set as a rule that we call as the auto accounting rule. Through auto accounting rule, we set the rule when you create the transaction, which account code combination system has to derive, you can set up the system with the concept called as auto accounting rule. So there are many accounts we have to set through auto accounting rule, but as of now, all are not mandatory. But as a part of receivables, we'll set auto accounting rule for all account types. Okay. For now, okay, the basic types we will set. The basic types means for account receivables and revenue, for these two account types, we will complete the auto accounting rules so that we can start working on receivables by completing other setups also. So when we are working on the relevant topics, we will set up auto accounting for other account types. For now, we are going to set for only two account types. One is accounts receivable account, other one is revenue account. For rest, we can set when those are required based on the concepts which we are going to deal. Okay, simple point here is what does it mean by auto accounting rule? With auto accounting rule, you can derive the accounting automatically for receivables transactions. That's all. Okay. To get accounting code combination automatically, we are setting this rule. Like payables, system won't take debit and credit accounts automatically. You have to tell to system from where, which segment code it has to take. We have to tell in the receivables. Then only accounting will happen automatically. Okay, payables by default it will happen automatically, but receivables it won't happen automatically. To automate the accounting, we have to create the auto accounting rule. We'll see how to set that. Only we are going to set for two account types. One is accounts receivable, other one is revenue. We have many account types in the auto accounting rule. Those all will set very soon. Now only these two account types we are going to set auto accounting rule. So you can just see the task called as manage auto accounting rules. Okay, manage auto accounting rules.
So, sorry to interrupt, Lakshmi.
Sorry?
In the payable side, whatever the distribution line it is taking, it is also taking from the rapid implementation sheet accounts only, right? Payable side, it is taking automatically.
No.
Debit side.
No, see, when we are doing the setups, it is taking. When we are doing the setups, the common option is taking. In that invoice distribution, how it is taken from rapid implementation? No, right? We created invoice, right? When you create invoice, we are using the distribution set sometimes. We are entering manual distribution. That's what system is taking. Right? Do you remember that?
That means we are creating the distribution sets before we create the invoice in payables also.
Yes. We are creating distribution sets. You may use distribution set or you may enter manual distribution. Whatever you are providing the distribution account through distribution set or manual distribution, that account only system would take.
Before giving in the invoice, we have to create the distribution set. I'm asking.
You are not aware of it?
I was just blindly taking the account which is already there before first classes. I missed first 1 week classes.
You missed those classes?
Yeah, first few classes for before the invoice.
You can play those videos. Okay, play those videos. Any doubts you can ask me. Without playing, just say. You may ask, I may answer, but it goes like that only. Yeah. Better you can play those, okay, and go through any questions. Yes, we can discuss in the end of the class, or else we can connect and discuss. Okay. So the answer for your question is, before we create the invoice, yes, we create the distribution set. That distribution set you can use during the invoice creation, or else don't create any distribution set. You can enter the manual distribution. This is all about when you create manual invoice. When you are creating invoice through matching, you no need to use distribution set. You no need to enter manual distribution. Distribution system will copy from purchasing order, PO. How it will take from PO? Anyone? Accrual account it is taken. We have seen. How it is taken from PO?
Yeah, we given the accounting rule before and set. Then it is taking from there.
We created PO tab. Right?
Yes, pivot tab, and we combined the
PO
three
tab
account,
you given,
charge account.
yeah, in PO tab you given one of the account called as accrual account. Whenever you create the PO, system will take that accrual account into PO document. So when you create invoice against that PO, the same account it will copy to invoice distribution. That's all. Yeah. So these are the points which we are aware. Yeah, the same. So now we'll go and create the auto accounting rule. Okay, when you create the transaction, the receivables, which account it has to debit, which account it has to credit, and what should be the code combination we have to set up. System knows which should be debited, which should be credited, but what code combination it has to take, we have to set through auto accounting rule. We'll see that. Click on go to task icon. So now we loaded through rapid implementation, right? Here you can check for your business unit. So Amex US business unit, search. You can notice system created auto accounting rule also because of rapid implementation. But we should understand. I'm deleting those. We will create so that we can understand this. Yeah, go to auto accounting rules. Say create. Select our business unit, Amex US business unit. So we want to create auto accounting rule only for two types. One is account receivable, other one is revenue. Because these two types only very much mandatory when you create the transaction type. Transaction. When you create transaction, system will pick accounts receivable, account debit, revenue as a credit. So we'll set minimum those two types. Here you could see there are many account types. We will set all those. We'll set all those when you're dealing with relevant topics. For now, as a mandatory set, receivables under revenue. Select receivables account type. Okay, these are the segments we have in our chart of accounts. When system will create receivables account code combination, what company it has to take, what department it has to take, we have to set. When we talk about company, so for each business unit we allocate one balance and segment value. For current business unit we are using 1000. So the same you have to set here. You can set here as a constant, or else you can tell to the system here I can say take 1000. And system will create receivables account code combination company take as 1000 I can say, or else what I can do is I can tell to the system in the transaction type level there is a receivables account code combination. From the take this company I can just give the hint to the system. The transaction type, okay, we have an account called as receivables account. In that account we have company, department account and all account code combinations. From there system has to take. That's how I can set. If not that, we can give the accounts at customer side also. I'll show you where. Sales step anyway it is not applicable. It's other applications. Okay. So this is how you can specify. Okay. Company take from supplier customer site level. This is how you can set, or else receivable account is available at transaction type level. Transaction type level, whatever the company we have in the receivables account code combination, take it. This is how we can tell to the system. Or else you can say they directly take 1000. The same way for department also you can say take from transaction type, or you can say take 1000. You may say account you can take from transaction type. Transaction type level we have a receivables account code combination. From that receivable account code combination, account whatever available that system has to take. This is how. This we call as sources. Take from source or else take constant value, fixed value. Here you can select account, accounts receivable account. Okay, here also you can just set here anyway default only. You can set constant. You can set constant values or you can set source based. Okay, you can tell to the system take from so and so place. That's all. Source based you can set, or else constant you can set. This is how you can set for receivables. Then say create another. You will set account code combination for revenue account also. Select account type as revenue. Here you can select company 1000, department. These you can override. When you create the transaction, the same code combination you will take before you perform accounting. You can change and you can create the accounting. The default we are setting this. Don't think these are permanent. Just default. This is what system has to pick. Then you can change it. Here you have to provide the revenue.
I mean, according to the department and all, whatever the transaction we are creating, we can change it later.
Later now, during the transaction creation, this account code combination system will take as it is. And you can change. You can change this code combination.
In the point of creating the invoice or all the type of transactions, at that point we have to
The
change.
receivables. Okay, invoice only we call it the transaction. When you create transaction in the receivables, you can change it.
Okay, that's you're going to show us when
Yeah,
you're doing the
definitely.
transaction.
Definitely, we have to see that.
Okay.
Otherwise, how we can understand that?
Because I missed the distribution, that's it. Okay.
That distribution is different. That is payables. This is receivables. Okay,
Yeah.
we are in receivables, right? It's showing the receivables, not in the payables. Search with the revenue code account. There are multiple revenue accounts. For test, you can pick any one of the revenue account. Okay. So
In EBS, we have some option. In EBS, we have some option like line that we can select as source. We don't have that here.
sorry.
Line option. In EBS, we have some option like line. With means we can take
Memo
the
lines.
account line level. So we don't have similar
Yeah, we have that option here. That is applicable only for revenue, not for receivables. Here you can see that.
Okay.
Memo line,
Standard line.
memo lines, everything is same. We will test that also. Okay. We'll create the memo standard lines and all.
Okay.
Right. So those are the concepts. That is the reason I'm not touching. When we are dealing with that, definitely I'll take it. So contains. So you can pick any one of the default revenue account here. Red wine revenue. Set some constant values. Done. Okay, there are many account types you can see here. Okay, but for now we are setting only for two types revenue and receivables, which are mandatory. For remaining also we have to complete the setup. We will see that later. Set that. We completed auto accounting configuration for revenue and receivables accounts. You can see here. For our business unit, revenue and receivables. This is for receivables, this is for revenue. Yeah. We completed, say, save and close. Done with the auto accounting rule. Now let's create payment terms. We have seen in the payables also how to create the payment terms. The purpose remains same. Okay. So to calculate primarily due dates and all, the payment terms are required. When we are acting as suppliers, when we are giving invoice, within the invoice we have to include the payment terms. The same our customers will follow and they'll record in their payables application. Okay. So we'll go to create the payment terms and we'll create the statement cycles. That means how often we want to send the statements to the customers. If to follow up the customer to collect the payment, we have to assign the collectors also to every customer. Okay. So for every customer, we have to assign the payment term, when they have to pay, and how often we want to send the statements, the statement cycle we have to create. And to follow up the customer to collect the payment, we have to create the collectors. So let's create these payment terms, statement cycle, and the collector definition. First, let's create payment terms. Here you can see the task called as manage receivables payment terms. Click on go to task icon. Okay, say create. Use reference data set as a common only. For everything we have a common at BU level, right? Except payables payment terms, everything we have common. So whatever the setups we do, we have to use common only. Select, say okay. And payment term, you can create any one of the payment terms, say Amex, immediate payment term. Here discount basis, you can select invoice amount. Any discount we are going to give to the customer that we want to give on their invoice amount. Installment option. If customer is going to pay partial amount, how that has to be adjusted. So you can say include tax and freight in the first installment. Okay. If any tax and freight is there on the invoice, whatever customer partial amount is paying, let's say we want to adjust our tax and freight if applicable. That you can set. And as per payment terms, here below you can set the information. So immediate means how many days customer has to pay. Total 100% amount customer has to pay in 0 days. If you want to give the discount, you can give, but here immediate payment term discount is not applicable. So save and close. Let's create one more payment term also. Select reference data set as a common. The Amex net 10. Okay, here you can say customer has to pay in 10 days. If you want to add the discounts here, you can add. Customer has to pay in 10 days. Okay. So if customer is going to pay in 5 days, 5% discount is applicable. Multiple levels you can set. Click on add. 2% discount if customer is going to pay at least in 7 days instead of 10 days. 1% discount if customer is going to pay in at least 8 days. Multiple levels you can set the discount in the receivables. In payables only 3 levels, but in the receivables multiple levels. Click on add. You can set multiple levels. So this is how you can create. Done.
Are these payment terms, okay, these are different from what we created in payables, right? These are my receivable payment terms. Okay.
No, I didn't get your question.
No, sorry, I understood it. It is receivables payment terms. I thought it is same as what we created earlier. So we are just creating.
This we can access only from receivables. Now what we are creating, this is only, see, the task name also receivables payment term. For payables, it is just payment terms.
Right, okay.
So whatever we created in the payables, that you cannot access from the receivables. What we are creating in the receivables, that you cannot find from payables. The application specific. Yeah. Fine. Done. Now we'll go and create the statement cycles. How often, by following which intervals you want to send the statements to your customer, just you have to define. So search for statement cycles. Manage statement cycles. Just click on go to task. Say create. Here you can say Amex monthly. Monthly or weekly, how you require, you can just define the statement cycle. And what is the interval? Already written monthly. And click on add. This monthly statements applicable for which BU? From which BU you are going to send? Amex US business unit. Statement date when you send the statement, say every month end, December 31st. Same way you can just specify here. Amex so Jan 31st. So this is how you can add. Okay. Just save and close. Now we have to create the collector. Okay. When you create the customer, these details are required. What payment terms are applicable for that customer, what statement cycle is applicable, who is the collector to follow up the customer to collect the payments or to remind the due. So these details are required for every customer definition. That is the reason we have to create all this. Now we'll go and create the collector. The employee user we can convert as a collector. Okay. Implementation user, no. If you just create user called user in the security console, with that you cannot create the collector. So you should have a employee user. Search for collectors. Define collectors. Expand it. You can see the task called as manage collectors. Click on go. Click on add. Here you can give the name, maybe Amex collector. The type is employee only. Which employee is going to act as a Amex collector? You can select. Only employee users you can access here. Amex. Select reference data set as a common only. Common set, done. That's all. Say save and close. This is how you can convert employee as a collector wherever it is applicable. Which employees are acting, taking the role as a collector role to follow up and to collect the payments. Now, these payment term statement cycle collectors information we have to assign to the customer. Before we assign, we can group all these payment term statement cycle collectors information with the concept called as customer profile class. Not only grouping this payment term statement cycle collectors, ideally the customer profile classes you can create by classifying the customer. So you can create one customer profile class like good customer, or bad customer, or average customer, excellent customer. Accordingly, you can assign the payment terms, accordingly, you can assign the collectors, accordingly, you can send the statement cycles and other information also you can set based on the profile of customer. Based on the profile of customers, we have to create the customer profile classes. We'll go and see that. Okay, we'll go and see how customer profile can be created. So within that profile class only, we can select all these and other information also we can set. Okay. So instead of assigning these one by one to the customer, you can group all these into profile class. Simply profile class you can assign to the customer so that these all will be assigned automatically with the help of profile class. Let's see how to create the profile class. Try to understand with the help of profile class, we can classify the customers. You can create one profile class for good customers, one for excellent customers, one for average customers, one for bad customers. How you can say those are the bad and the average, excellent? Maybe based on their profile. Okay, based on their profile, what sort of experience we have, like when we are dealing with those customers, how we have a transactions with them, how they are just paying us. Okay, based on the different parameters, you can create the profiles or later you can change. Now you may take one customer profile class as a good. Later you may just convert change to average. So that's how we'll see this how to create. So we have to create the customer profile class. Search for customer profile classes. Customer profile classes. Manage receivables customer profile classes. Click on go. So by default, Oracle is providing one profile class called as a default profile class. Okay, one Oracle is providing as a default. So that we no need to use. Okay, one Oracle is providing as a default. We cannot. That is not required for us. We can create as per our requirement. Just click on create. You can enter the name Amex. Okay, so Amex standard profile or Amex customer profile class. Any name you can give and assign the collector. Who's our collector? Amex collector. Scroll little down. Select payment terms. Amex immediate, Amex net 10 we have. Select Amex immediate. And statement cycles we created, just you can select here. Amex monthly. And this is how you can just select the information within this profile class. And we have different concepts like balance for billing, how to enable, what information we have to select, all those we'll see. We are dealing with those concepts. We'll come back to the same page and we set required information. For now, just this is how with the basic information you can create the profile class. Collector we selected, payment terms we selected, statement cycles we selected. Then say save and close. So this profile class we have to assign to the customer when you create the customer. During the customer creation, this profile class we have to assign so that within the profile class, what are the payment term, collector, and statement cycles we associated, those will be assigned to the customer with the help of this profile class. We'll see those. Now, to maintain the sites BU wise, we have to create the reference data set for customer sites. Okay, so we have a common. Common is not available to use in the receivables when you create the customer site. When you create the customer site, the common reference data set is not applicable. It won't be available to use. That is the reason to maintain BU specific customer sites, you have to create the reference data set. That reference data set you have to use at the time of customer site creation. Okay. So definitely we have to create the separate reference data set for customer site purpose. If you have 4 business units create 4 reference data sets so that whenever you create any customer, when you want to associate that site to specific BU, use that relevant reference data set. We'll see that. We'll create one reference data set. That reference data set will assign to business unit. We have seen how to create the reference data set, how to assign to BU for the purpose of payment terms. Now the same we are going to do it for customer site purpose. That's it. No difference. For payment terms, to understand the payment terms, how that can be linked with the business units, we created reference data set and we assign. The same way now we can create one for customer sites also. We'll go and create the reference data set. Say reference data sets. Manage reference data sets. Click on go to task icon. Just say create. You can name it as Amex customer site set. Okay. The name is Amex customer site set. This is how you can create one reference data set. This we have to assign to BU. What is the task name? Business unit set assignments, right? Just click on go. Select our BU. Say apply. Find our BU. Search. Select. Say save and close. So payables payment terms, we assigned one reference data set to understand that. Now in the same way for receivables, customer sites we have to assign one. So here we have a reference data object called as customer account sites. When you create the customer sites, you cannot find common. If if system is going to display common, it is okay. Here, whatever you have, the site you can create by selecting the common. It will work, but the common won't be available when you create the customer sites. That is the reason we have to use our own. Here, assign whatever the reference data set we created. What is that? Amex customer site set. So whatever the reference data set we are assigning to this BU for the object called as customer account site, the same you have to use at the time of customer creation. Okay, customer site creation, which you are going to use for this business unit. Okay, for this BU, whatever the customer sites you are going to create, for all those you have to use the same reference data set. Okay. Assign our reference data set to BU for the reference data object called as customer account site. That's all. So save and close. Now we can go and create the customer. We create a reference data set and we assign. Now let's create customer. So for this, no additional role is required. In payables, to create the supplier, we are assigning payables manager role to the user, but here no role is required. Directly you can create from the project. So create customer. We'll create the customer and we'll wind up for today. Okay, maybe 5 minutes. So go to task called as create customer. Click on go. We can name it as the Amex customer 1. Let's use this name. Okay. And account address set. BU level, whatever the reference data set we assigned for customer account site, the same you have to select here. Otherwise, you cannot create the transactions and receivables with this customer. So Amex customer site set, the same we used at BU level, right? BU we assigned the same, select here. Now provide the address information. You can see nothing is mandatory, but you should provide enough data. Otherwise, this address cannot be visible in certain concepts. You cannot process the transactions also. Site name I am giving as Amex address. Select postal code. Okay, now this is the customer details, customer name, okay, and customer address. What purpose we contact these customers? When customer is purchasing from us, we have to be in touch with the customer to send the bill and to send the material. So what purpose we are going to contact this customer address, that we have to set here as a address purpose. Click on add. So this is the address where we send the bill and material. Say for example, select this address purpose is bill to. Okay, we send the bill to this customer. Click on add. To the same address we want to ship the material also. Then select as ship to address also. Now the ship to and bill to we have to map. Okay, if we ship to, which bill to address is we have to set. Select the same address. This address only will come. Same address is going to be shipped to and bill to purpose. We have to link those. That's all. Okay. Or else you can create one more address. You can set that for one for billing, one for shipping. Or else same location you are going to send your invoice and you are going to send the material. The same you can define as a ship to and bill to. That's all. Now you can say save and close. System will create the customer. Automate will take one profile class for this customer as a default, which is system created one. But we created our own profile class called as Amex standard profile, right? That we have to assigned to this customer. For that, we have to override system selected profile class. Okay, that we will go and see. Here you can search for our customer, Amex customer 1, right? Search. The customer definition will create as a 3 records. This is a customer information. This is a customer account. For every customer, automatically system creates account. Against account, we'll have a site. We created one site address. Now go to account. Click on account number. Just click on customer account number. Now go to profile history. Here you can say system selected on profile called as default. This is system created one, Oracle provided one. In every instance you can find it. Whenever you create the customer, it will take this. Okay, whatever you created as per your requirement, with that you can override this. Let's override. Okay, here we have the same, it is showing as a profile class default here. Now how to change it? Whatever we created, that we have to select here, right? So select this record, select, go to actions, say correct record, select correct. Now you can change what we created, Amex standard, select, say yes, let it override existing one. Now see Amex standard profile. Within that we have Amex collector, Amex immediate payment term, Amex monthly statement cycles. System is default. Now say save and close. The same profile class is required at site level. System will use whatever available at site. Click on site number. Here also go to profile history. Already account level we given. If you click on create site profile, account level, whatever the profile we have, that system will default. It will copy to site. Just click on create site profile. Okay, it created. So it copied the same profile. Within that, what we have, it copied. Then say save and close. Say save and close. Finally click on done. Our customer is ready. Okay, we created a customer site and address. So up to here we completed setups, the remaining setups, and if time permits the process also we'll see in the tomorrow session. Okay, we're done with this basic setups. So we're done for today. If you have any questions, you can stay back. Okay, we're done for today. Thank you. See you.
Lakshman, yesterday's video you couldn't upload. I don't see.
Yesterday video. Oh, not sure. I'll check it. If it is not uploaded, I'll place immediately. Yeah.
Lakshman sir, able to create an employee and supervisor relationship.
Yeah,
It's
you are
getting
not
error
able
for
to
me.
create. Have you followed the point
Yes.
what I was addressing? The supervisor
Yes.
you are creating, that should be prior to that employee hire date.
Yeah, that I followed. But even when I searched my,
We'll go and see now.
okay.
Let me stop recording. Not required.